That full-width LED light bar isn't bolted to an aftermarket bumper. Ram engineered it straight into the factory structure because this truck was never designed to stay on the road. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the Ram 3500 Rebel X isn't just the most capable heavy-duty off-road truck Ram has ever produced. It's the truck that forces Ford and GM to rethink what a work-ready off-roader can actually be. There's one structural engineering decision built into this truck's chassis that no competitor in the heavy-duty segment has attempted at the factory level. I'll get there. Is this worth your money at the top of the heavy-duty price range? My answer is going to be more nuanced than you're expecting. We're covering the cabin, the exterior architecture, and the powertrain, and the backstory of why this truck exists that didn't start in a consumer product brief. Here's what matters most about the Rebel X, and it's not the winch or the light bar. It's the frame. Ram's heavy-duty platform runs a fully boxed ladder frame with variable thickness hydroformed rail sections, thicker at the cab mounting points where torsional load concentrates, progressively lighter through the midsection where flex compliance is actually an advantage off-road. Most buyers never think about this. They should. A full-size heavy-duty truck carries real working payload, up to 7,680 pounds on the 3500. And when you're doing that on uneven terrain, frame geometry changes how load transfers to all four contact patches. The Rebel X isn't just lifted for clearance, it's calibrated for loaded off-road operation, which is a meaningfully different engineering target than a typical sport off-roader. Speculative tech number 1, an adaptive frame torsion monitor. Piezoelectric sensors bonded to the frame rails at 6 load points, reading real-time frame flex and feeding that data to the suspension control module. When sensors detect asymmetrical loading, one side carrying significantly more than the other, the system pre-biases the electronic rear locker engagement before wheel spin begins. Standard lockers react. This one anticipates. The frame sets the structural argument. The cabin tells you what kind of driver Ram thinks will actually use it. Step inside and the scale of that panoramic screen reframes every competitor immediately. It's a full-width display spanning from the digital instrument cluster across to the passenger side. Not a large center-mounted screen, a genuinely unified digital surface running navigation on the left, media on the right, with physical HVAC and toggle controls positioned directly below. That physical control layer matters more than it gets credit for. When you're running in work gloves on a job site, tactile switches don't require visual confirmation. Ram kept them. That's the right call. The door panels tell a more layered story. Carbon fiber upper cap, dimensionally stable, resists warping across the temperature range a working truck actually operates in, from desert summer to mountain winter. Leather mid-panel with red contrast stitching at every contact zone. The blue ambient strip running the full door length functions as a low-light orientation system, not ambient theater, locating handles and controls in a dark cab without requiring overhead light activation. For anyone who's worked pre-dawn on a job site, that's a small detail that earns its keep every morning. Speculative tech number 2, a worksite HMI mode that consolidates payload weight, frame torsion readings, and rear air suspension height per corner into a single driver display, updating continuously from a dedicated chassis IMU, isolated from the main Uconnect ECU. Ford's Pro Power on board gives you generator capability. This goes further, giving you real-time structural feedback before you load a fifth wheel that pushes your GVWR boundary. Where I think they missed the mark, the center console lid. On a truck at this specification, the flat armrest surface has no dedicated waterproof storage for work documents or gloves-off personal items. At this price point, that's an oversight a serious work truck buyer will notice on day one. The interior makes a coherent case for a buyer who works as hard as they play. But the piece of the backstory that explains why this brief existed at all, that's coming up next. Here's what I'm hearing about the origin of this build. The Rebel X reportedly began as an emergency response logistics platform brief, designed to operate fully loaded across compromised terrain when roads are gone. The consumer truck is what came out the other side of that process. The powertrain section is where that engineering intent shows up most clearly. Start at the front. That bumper isn't a bumper. It's a structural skid plate extending forward from the frame rails, with the factory winch mount integrated into the primary load path. This isn't a bracket solution. The winch pulls against frame steel, not sheet metal. The full-width LED light bar sits flush in the upper bumper aperture, not protruding, maintaining the approach angle geometry. Every light, Every accessory point was engineered into the bumper section before the body lines were drawn around it. The fender flares are bolted and sealed, accommodating the Rebel X's wider track stance, running 35-inch all-terrain rubber on 18-inch beadlock-capable wheels. Ground clearance sits at approximately 11.4 inches with the standard 4-inch suspension lift. Overall length on the crew cab runs around 232 inches. The departure angle at the rear is clean. No integrated step that sacrifices geometry, just a functional receiver hitch and the illuminated Ram tailgate lettering that doubles as a high-mount brake light reference point in low-visibility conditions. This design holds up because the functional components, the integrated bumper, the sealed flares, the departure geometry, are structural decisions. A refresh cycle doesn't touch them, but structure means nothing without the powertrain to back it up. Engine options: the 6.4-liter Hemi V8 at 410 horsepower and 429 pound-feet of torque for buyers who want gasoline simplicity, and the 6.7-liter Cummins high-output diesel at 420 horsepower and 1,075 pound-feet of torque for buyers who tow seriously. That diesel torque number is what the Rebel X's chassis was built around. 1,075 pound-feet at low RPM means you're moving a loaded gooseneck trailer at 6 miles per hour across a muddy field with the same composure you'd have on an interstate on-ramp. Speculative tech number 3, predictive tow grade management. GPS topographic data feeding the transmission control module to pre-select gear range and activate exhaust brake engagement up to 4 seconds before a downhill grade begins. Standard systems wait for the driver or for vehicle speed deviation to trigger a response. A predictive system closes that reaction gap entirely. For anyone who's descended a mountain pass with a loaded 30-foot trailer, you know exactly what that 4-second window costs you in control. Against the Ford F-350 Tremor at 1,050 pound-feet of diesel torque, the Rebel X edges it on torque output and adds the structural off-road integration Ford hasn't matched at the factory level. Against the Silverado HD ZR2, which runs 470 horsepower but significantly less diesel torque, the Rebel X wins on sustained loaded capability rather than peak output. The engineering picture is complete. Now let's talk about whether the financial picture holds together. Now, here's what I actually think, completely straightforward. The emergency logistics origin of this brief isn't marketing language. It's why the frame sensors, the structural bumper, and the predictive tow management exist as a coherent system rather than a list of options. This truck was built to function first. It was priced second. Pricing. Expect the Rebel X to land between $78,000 and $94,000 depending on powertrain and package configuration. Real-world context: a loaded Ford F-350 Tremor diesels out at around $84,000 and gives you comparable towing capacity, but no factory-integrated winch architecture, no frame torsion management, and a cab that doesn't carry this level of display integration at any equivalent price point. A Silverado HD ZR2 starts around $75,000 with strong off-road credentials but significantly less diesel torque for working applications. On depreciation, properly specified heavy-duty trucks with genuine mechanical differentiation and a coherent off-road and work package have historically held residual value better than standard trims. If you're trading in a current Ram 2500 Power Wagon or an F-350 Tremor and planning a 5-year hold, run the depreciation model before you react to the sticker. The Rebel X's specification breadth is exactly what supports residual value in this segment. Here's the call. If you work your truck hard, real payload, real towing, real terrain, and want factory accountability for every structural component rather than an aftermarket build, the Rebel X is the strongest integrated option in the heavy-duty segment right now. If peak horsepower and maximum tow rating on pavement are your primary metrics, the F-350 Tremor with the 7.3-liter gasoline gives you more peak output for comparable money. The Rebel X earns its premium through structural coherence and working load intelligence, not through spec sheet bragging rights. At the open, I said that LED light bar wasn't bolted on, it was engineered in. Having walked the full picture, that detail now carries the weight of everything else. The frame sensors, the structural bumper, the predictive tow system. Every piece of this truck was designed from the inside out, not dressed up from the outside in. I genuinely love your perspective, especially if you've put real working miles on a current Ram 3500 or compared a Power Wagon against an F350 Tremor in the field. Drop your experience below. Ram 3500 Rebel X versus the Ford F350 Tremor. That head-to-head is next. Subscribe if this kind of analysis is what you're here for. See you then.